Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama.
Hello and welcome to the Iowa Podcast. My name is Jim Langin. I'm pitch hitting today for Justin Brady, who is on his way to Vienna. Lucky him. Justin and I go back pretty far to the days when I was in banking, and he and I were colleagues, and he asked me to do this pinch hit for him, and I'm just totally excited to be here. So, tell you a little bit about myself. I spent 30 years in the banking business in and around Des Moines, Iowa. About 5 years ago, started my own bank and small business consulting firm, specializing in small business finance. I've learned a few things since I started out on my own and became an entrepreneur. A couple of the big things I noticed were that entrepreneurs need to be exceptional at relationship building, exceptional at communicating. And lucky for us, my guest today is Troy Strawhecker, a colleague of mine, a great friend of mine. We go back also to my days in banking and found out we have a lot of mutual acquaintances. But I consider him tops on my list in great communicators. So Troy,
wow,
welcome to the show.
That's high praise. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, this is going to be fun. I've been looking very forward to this. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on the Iowa Podcast.
Happy to do it. Looking forward to the next 20 to 30 minutes, and let's have some fun and share some stories and hopefully share some things with the listeners that they may already know, but might hearing it a different way could help them put it into their practice and help them be a little bit better at what they do.
I love it. That's going to be great. Well, let's kick it off, Troy, and talk a little bit about relationship building, if you don't mind. People describe you in my world as a master communicator. And I know you said, well, that's, master. What does master mean? Well, to me, in my relationship with you, you've always been very good at communicating with folks naturally and building excellent relationships in your business and your personal life. You obviously like people and being around them. What is your most important ingredient when meeting new people and building relationships?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think part of it is we're born with certain things, and there's certain things that we aspire or want to be, and we're always trying to sharpen that saw. With regard to people and relationships, I think fundamentally it's important to note that I'm one of 8 children. I'm number 7 of 8. If I didn't speak up or communicate, then I probably wasn't going to get what I needed or wanted. But to your point about communication and relationship building, somebody that I care about a lot, and maybe we'll talk about mentorship at some point during the podcast, but somebody I've learned a lot from, his name is Mike Nelson. He happens to be a Des Moines person as well. Really a wonderful business person, real estate developer and contractor. But he had this little journal that he carried, and he filled them up and get another one. It was like those composition books you had like in 8th grade that had the graph paper in them and so forth. And he always had his name, and then school. I think he put Hard Knocks sometimes or whatever, but he would write a quote that I recall in the top left that said, "The world belongs to the person who tells the best story." Mm-hmm. So as it relates to communication, I think it can be in a really essential way to achieve your goals because you're clearly articulating what you want out of something or need out of something. And it's helpful to the recipient, I think, to know exactly where you're coming from. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think that's kind of the start of that's a little bit about my DNA, how I'm built. I was in a lot of noise, so I had to find a very efficient way to get my message across or my request or my desires. And then I've also been around a lot of wonderful people that I've learned some communication tips from as well. So that's probably how I'm built. Part of it's just being born into a large family, and then also being around people that I watch communicate effectively.
Yeah, I think that's, I love that answer. And, when you're in a big family, I come from a larger family, not quite that large, but I'm the youngest. So I've always had to fight for for my voice too, but I got mostly what I wanted, so sometimes I was just quiet.
That's part of being among the youngest. Yeah,
exactly. No, that was a great answer. Mike Nelson's a great individual. I know him too, and admire him a ton.
I mean, you pardon me for interrupting. You asked me what's the most important ingredient, and I don't know if I answered that component.
Sure.
I think being authentic and having a little bit of humor, I think, can help people want to listen to what you're saying. So I think if they know that you're not full of it or have some either hidden or non-hidden agenda, and also have them have a pleasurable experience in communicating with you, whether it be on email or face-to-face or over the phone, I think that those can be the ingredients to a successful relationship start. And then, being a good communicator, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say, remembering that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and to try and use them proportionately, because communication is not just speaking, it's also, more importantly, listening.
Absolutely. And I know our listeners, I know I'm the one sitting across from you, and I know you the best right now. But just my experience with you, I love what you said about that genuine and being authentic. What I've witnessed is when you communicate with folks, you ask really good questions and you take an interest in them. That's probably one of my main takeaways observing you through our friendship and through our business dealings.
I appreciate that.
And I just really think that's,
How are you doing today, Jim?
See?
Yeah.
See,
how's Tracy?
How
are the children?
They are just wonderful. And I appreciate, shout out to my wife, Tracy. So thank you. Good to mention her and things like this. I have another question here for you, Troy.
Yeah, let her up.
Because you mentioned you've been fortunate to be around a lot of great mentors and great people. You mentioned Mike Nelson, but you've also been in situations where you've got to meet a lot of very interesting people, high profile people, celebrities. I know that if I may, I know the lead singer of Rascal Flatts, for instance.
I know those guys. Yep,
he's your good friend.
The harmony and guitar player, Joe Don Rooney.
Okay, yeah, the harmony. Okay,
the lead singer Gary and I actually share the same birthday. Not just the day, but also the year, which is funny. We literally have the exact same birthday.
How did you come to meet Joe Don?
Yeah, so if maybe the spirit of the question was, how did you come to know some of these folks and so forth?
Sure.
And so I would say first and foremost, I don't know if it's sort of an interesting cosmic magnetism or whatever, but for whatever reason, I've had interesting people come into my life or me come into theirs really since I can remember. I mean, from my hometown, which is liberal Kansas, it's ironically a little oxymoron in the southwest corner of the state, but that's really what I would call home. It was a wonderful place to grow up, small town, about 15,000 people. Honestly, kind of an ethnically diverse town as well. So from the beginning, I was used to seeing people of different races, religions, colors, and creeds and so forth. So I consider that a real blessing. A girl that I grew up with and was dear friends, first girlfriend kind of a thing, ends up winning Miss USA. So that's kind of crazy. And then in living in LA, a college buddy and I were out there, we're playing basketball with Barry Gordy Jr. because they lived in the same neighborhood. So there's been a few random touches. But what I would say, the people that have come into my life have been, what situations have I put myself in to maybe have people that might be interesting or noteworthy to be in those situations. And so my short answer, I guess, is people ask me all the time, how did you get to know this person? Or why were you backstage there? Or what, how are you in that movie? I would say it's about giving. So to me, the great irony of giving of ourself, whether it be time, talents, or treasures, or what have you, is that the more you put out there, the more you get back. And a lot of these folks that I met came from probably being a participant in a charitable organization. Probably the largest single group of people that I've met was from the Folds of Honor Foundation, which is a charitable organization that a lot of celebrities and musicians and other folks have given of their time and talents to. And me being in the mix with that, and then those people doing it, that's how I got to know Joe Don and a bunch of other people. And if I started going through the name list, it'd be a little bit nauseating for some, but I'm sure there's listeners that have a lot more famous people as friends than I do. But does that answer your question?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And I just, like you said, the Folds of Honor organization, and for just a second, I want you to, if you don't mind, talk about that a little bit and about how much, you believe in the organization and what it's all about, because our listeners may not know. But, I just love what you just said. I love when you give, you get, and you've put yourself in those situations to give, and then look what happens. So
yeah, what an incredible irony. I mean, whether it's time, resources, or kindness, oftentimes you receive way more than you anticipated. And I think the act of giving, it fosters a sense of community and connection. And then this cycle of generosity that just kind of keeps coming back, because there's other people in the world that want to do it. And what's interesting about celebrities is, am I starstruck? I mean, I don't think so. I think it's kind of fun to have been around people who are in, whether they're on television or in movies or music they play, there's constant reminders of their talent that you hear. They want to give back too, and they give of their talent. And so it's usually through a musical show or autograph session or whatever, because they're trying to do right by themselves to give. And if I'm in that circle, so Folds of Honor, to answer your question, again, unbelievable people. If I'm being totally honest, I would say the game of golf has probably put more important things in my life than any other one single thing, more than religion, more than where I went to school and all these sorts of things. But I like I mentioned, I grew up in Kansas, ended up at the University of Kansas after a couple of bebops along the way. And one of my college roommates and fraternity brothers is a guy named Dan Rooney. And Dan is an exceptional human. He founded the Folds of Honor Foundation in 2007. If you can go out to foldsofhonor.org, you can really see and hear it for yourself. Your listeners can for themselves. But Folds of Honor Foundation's purpose in life is to give educational scholarships to the offspring or spouses of fallen or wounded soldiers and of first responders, because there is, in this field of battle, we can leave no one behind. And so there are lots of cool organizations doing things for support. Dan was committed, as I was on the board early on, and it's just a really great organization. Now they've got this whole machine. They were committed to have the gift of education be the lasting legacy for those people.
That's awesome.
And so since its founding, it is awesome. Since its founding in 2007, there have been hundreds of millions of dollars of monies raised and over 62,000 scholarships for people to educate their legacy. So it's a really special organization. What does that have to do with country music? On one hand, not much, but we've had a lot of shows and galas and things, and these people really want to give back. So that's how I've been able to meet all these really great people.
That is awesome. Troy, thanks for doing that. I just think that that's just such a worthwhile give. Folds of Honor, I've heard so much about it. In fact, I think you educated me a little bit on, if you go to your local Quick Trip, I'm not to put a plug in for them, but I believe they're a huge sponsor of Folds of Honor. You can kind of get some stuff there. They are. So there's a local chapter now. The business model for them is to have like state chapters. So there's a local firefighter. There's a local firefighter named Jeremy Eglamore, and he is the president of the local chapter. And it's iowa.foldsofhonor.org, and they're doing some really cool things locally. So people can give back locally. They just did a ruck run, which is like exercising with a heavy backpack and doing a run, things that I don't really know about because I'm not inclined to do that stuff anymore. But they're doing some really cool things to not only raise money, but raise awareness. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for going through that. And
you're welcome.
And
Thanks for asking.
I like hearing about that. I like hearing how you're putting yourself, and again, that's what I think small business owners, entrepreneurs, everybody who's listening needs to maybe file that back in your brain as far as, hey, it's okay to go in there and give of yourself. I used to refer to it as a FaceTime when I was in banking, but giving, showing your face, getting involved. I met so many people that way and got myself known. I remember giving back to the community. Curious on because you have so many great stories that you've shared with me, and I'm not going to ask you to go through them all, but there's a couple of them I'd love to just talk about, and if you don't mind,
sure,
sharing a little bit about your time in Liberal, since you mentioned it, and about an illness you had.
I did.
That you've overcome, and I know you still maintenance and you still do stuff. But if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that, and then what a lot of your close buddies did, especially for those of us who have gray hair, you'll really like this.
Yeah, that's a cool story. Thanks for asking. I would say life is a team sport, and there are times when you're on the team supporting someone, and there's times when you're the person who needs that support. My hometown is a wonderful place, and I have childhood friends that I speak to on the regular. And part of it is just being in a small town, and we knew nothing else. But there is something special, I think, about at least my hometown, and I hope other people and listeners feel the same about theirs. But there's a really interesting bond, and everybody goes through challenges in life, and one of my challenges happened at an early age. I kind of think life was coming pretty easy to me in terms of, test taking, doing pretty well in school, being reasonably talented at things that I applied my talents to. I got some instant feedback that, hey, you might be okay at this. Certainly there was people way better at everything I ever did, but on the whole, I felt really pretty blessed and frankly, maybe a little bit arrogant about like, hey, this whole life thing's not too bad. And then I had a life interruption where I ended up becoming a cancer patient, which is what I think you're speaking about. Yeah. And so when I mentioned all good things coming to me from golf, literally my wife, Tracy, who grew up here in Des Moines, she played golf at the University of Kansas, and she was on the golf team with Dan Rooney, who was my roommate that I mentioned.
Good Dowling, good Dowling High graduate.
Good Dowling High, yeah. She's a Maroon, and she's the best thing that's ever happened in my life. So I think it's fair to say that most good things in my life came through golf. She's one of them. Had she not chosen KU to play golf, then I wouldn't have met her. I wouldn't have had these three children, Quincy, George, and Hale, who are just the light of our life. We have Parents Weekend this weekend. I know your daughter, Avery, is good buddies with our son Hale, and they both happen to choose the esteemed University of Kansas, and we'll see them this weekend. But
Rock Chalk, right?
Rock Chalk, that's right.
I'm learning.
You are learning. Pretty good. There's different hawks than just Iowa hawks. There are Jayhawks, a made-up bird. So how that relates to your question is most good things that came into my life, I think, came through golf. Part of it's just also being loyal to your friends from the past. Back to the liberal story. Without getting too much in detail, I was a pretty sick kid, and my hair started to fall out. And I'll never forget that day just because of chemotherapy. And I had kind of a Gordon Gekko hair vibe. Like my hair was almost as good as yours, dude. Like it was close. It wasn't quite there, but I had a lot of it, and it started falling out. And it was, just a constant reminder that now I knew what I was going through, but now the world was going to know that I was going through, unless they thought I was on the swim team, which used to happen a fair amount. But one of the kindest gestures in my life were my buddies, Mike Dreiling, Tim Dreiling, Kobe Zahn, Jeff Warner, Brad Harper, my brother Trevor, Charles Rowley. There was a movie that is one of my favorite movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And you might recall that everybody was pulling for Ferris because they thought he was deathly sick when he wasn't.
Ferris.
Yeah, the water tower from the police station when Jennifer Grey, in one of her first roles with Charlie Sheen, which was his first role, you look out the window and you see the Save Ferris thing. He's like, hey, why don't you tell Ferris everybody here at the station's pulling for him? My friends took these 2 king-size sheets and put Save Troy on them in big black paint, sewed it together, put it on these big 2x4s, and we used to climb the water tower in Liberal, which is really pretty stupid, but we'd break in and climb up the middle and just do some shenanigans, and we did it that night. They threw the sign over the side, and there was this huge, and it was clanking in the wind because it's always windy in Liberal. And I will tell you, I used to climb that tower with the best of them, but something came over me. I don't know if it was like my adolescence was coming to an end because I was fallible. I was really sick. I was probably scared. I was really pretty weak at the time just from some of the treatments. And I couldn't climb up all the way. I don't know if I ever told you this part. I couldn't make it to the top. And I was trying to be the first one up there because I was a little bit better shape than I am now. And I was a light kid. So I had to climb back down this water tower. And I went out to the 9th hole at Liberal Country Club, a little 9-hole country club, which is awesome. And they throw this sign over the side, and the clanking and the noise and the echoes were just nuts. And you waited for some lights to kind of come on in the surrounding houses. But I watched my buddies do this gesture, and it said Save Troy. And it was just so cool. A, it was funny because we were doing something we shouldn't. But B, these guys putting themselves in harm's way to do something funny about the movie, really a gesture to me to put Save Troy, because it's a small town. A lot of people knew I was going through a rough patch. We ended up doing that. So then the next morning, Sheriff Hinsdale calls our house, and the phone comes to me, the portaphone, you pull the antenna out. Troy, this is Sheriff Tom Hinsdale. look, I know you don't have any idea of what happened on that water tower. And of course, I could walk up my house and see it. And obviously, I knew what we did.
Yeah.
He's like, if there's any way you could find out just who had something to do with that, we're going to give you 24 hours of amnesty to get that sign down. So that was what was kind of cool about small towns is he got the sign down. Nobody got in trouble, but 7 or 8 friends got to show a little bit of love to their sick friend. And that was one of my coolest gestures. And one of my best friends, Mike Dreiling, every year on social media changes his profile picture around Christmas time, because that was the time that I was going through this, of the water tower, because I have a photo of it with the Save Troy banner on it. So
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Just a really wonderful act of love.
Well, I think and thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate that. I think it really goes back to what we've been talking about with, you've been able to build relationships just so genuinely, just so, it's not something you try and do. You want to do it. You like people, you want to do it. Maybe as a little bit of an aside, I know that's what I try and do in my business, when we're talking about.
Yeah. You help people through things.
Yeah. You have to like people to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really do. And you're not always going to be liked, but you have to like people. And I know in my world at Langin Solutions, and then I also own a company called HL Lender Resources that assists small business owners how to navigate through the banking business, how to procure financing, also how to navigate through the small business.
It's really not a crazy leap what we just did there. I mean, people have challenges in their life, and I was 19 years old, and my biggest challenge was I want to get through college, and I want to live. Obviously, want to live to see another day, which thank goodness for all the nurses and doctors and all that, which I did. And I had a lot of family support and friend support. But, when you're a business owner, like I have been for some time, financing can be sometimes intimidating. Maybe I've just had to use bank financing so much with all my real estate deals that I'm a little bit less scared of it. But there's always that first time when you're applying for a loan, or you're trying to find out if that's the right solution, and do I have the right team? And that can be very, very intimidating. And that was a 19-year-old climbing a tower. When you're in your 30s or 40s or whatever age might be, and you've got a business plan to execute on, and you don't know how you're going to get it done, that can be kind of a scary and daunting thing. And that's where people can reach out to folks like you to help them through that tough time. So I don't even think I probably understand everything that you guys do over there. Can you? Yeah. Jim, why don't you share with the listeners what Langin Solution does? So just flip this around. Yeah, let me sit there.
Yeah, this is great. This is not your show. It's mine. No, I'm kidding. No, thanks for actually mentioning that, because it really is a good segue. Really, when we work with clients, both banks are our clients and businesses are our clients. We encourage them to come to us first. I was with a client of mine the other day who said, I went to 6 banks, and, I had to tell my story 6 times, and half of them said one thing and half of them said another. And I looked at him and I said, kind of what you said, we do this, right? And he was like, really? And he goes, man, that would be great. And so we're I kind of looked at him and I said, I can take care of you. And that's really what people want to hear. Yeah. So small business owners, what really are you doing? I mean, we're all selling, and we were driving revenue, but we have to take care of people. That's just what we do. If we like people, we're around people all the time. I've heard people say, well, it's a people business. Most businesses are.
Right.
You got people working there. You're a people business, whether it's internal or external. I know your company, JT Logistics, you have 400 and some, I believe you told me,
employees,
people working there.
Team members, 700.
And so, I was wrong, 700. Yeah. So, you think about, you got internal and external clients there.
That's
so
right.
You really have to work at, and it's a skill that, relationship building and taking care of folks just doesn't come natural to a lot of people. So I know that's what we try and do in our business. So that's probably the essence of it,
right?
But also because, it's just a lot more, we can cut through a lot more of the BS. It's a lot more efficient. You save a lot of money through saving a lot of time.
Sure.
So essentially that's what it is.
Yeah. My experience is that most business owners, and I've been in the commercial real estate business for a while, so there can be a number of transactions. So there has been a fair number of transactions, but for most business owners, they're probably trying to find either a finance package or investors or whatever, and they're probably not going to do that more than 4 or 5 times in their career, and you're going to do it that many times in a week. So it can be very helpful. Like we mentioned earlier, life is a team sport. It's no different than business. Business is a team sport. People need help from time to time, and there are ways to get paid for what you do. There's ways for banks from an origination standpoint. You're just a different, channel of sales for them. They've got loans to make. People have money to borrow. Investors have, cash equity to deploy, and the world goes around and around. And it's just cool to hear you're part of that flywheel.
Thank you. Appreciate the question.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit more time here. I want to ask one more, if you'll share one more story.
Yeah.
And then what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about both our businesses at the very end. So, you told me a story once that you've just got to share with our listeners that, I think my mouth was just open the whole time you were talking to me about it. You were in a famous, traveling youth group called Up With People. When I was
famous is strong, but go on.
Well, it was famous when we only had 4 channels and a bunch of radio.
Yeah, right.
So, so Up With People, could you share kind of how you did that? You're very, very talented. We haven't even got to your singing
You're
voice.
Very kind. Yeah.
But if you'll share that, and then if you don't mind, share about the time you were in Southern California.
Oh, we can get to that.
And
the
Vin Scully story.
Yeah, sure. There's absolutely. So, thank you for asking. Up With People was an international community service and music group that started in 1964 by a person named Blanton Belk, and he wanted to channel all of the youthful energy around the Vietnam War, which most of it was negative. Not perceived as negative. They were just outreach and protests and so forth, and have it to be something a little bit more positive about peace and understanding. And I traveled in 1989 or 90, which was the 25th anniversary year of Up With People. But Up With People, interestingly enough, really did change the Super Bowl halftime show. There was always a really cool marching band that would do it, and Up With People was the first.
Really?
The first musical act to have a musical singing sort of a deal. And they did it maybe 4 or 5 times through the 70s when as the Super Bowl was evolving and changing. And then something really interesting happened. This guy named Michael Jackson and a company called PepsiCo decided to, and frankly, most people probably turn the television off, because who wants to watch, a bunch of Up With people singing about peace, love, and understanding when they want to, get another beer or a soda or whatever. And In Living Color actually was a television show on Fox that started to attract people. Hey, at halftime, turn over to us. So the powers that be at the Super Bowl said, we got to do something to thwart that. So we got to really up our game. And so Michael Jackson was the first really huge musical act, and the rest has been history for Super Bowl. But it is noteworthy that Up With People was an interesting part of Super Bowl's history. But their real purpose in life was to promote peace and understanding by getting out to the world with people from around the world to say, hey, people are the same wherever you go. And so I was a small town kid, as I mentioned, had maybe a little bit of chops for singing, and I was in a really great group called Cast A 8990. And what's really cool about my year, I've just been so lucky. I think I'm number 7 in the birth order, which is lucky number 7. All this crazy stuff happens to me, I think, because I try to put a good energy out, and hopefully it comes back. But the year that I traveled was the year that the wall came down.
Oh,
so we were supposed to go to about 6 countries. But when the wall came down and everything just changed so dramatically, we went to the teens of countries, mostly around Europe, and it was a really great way to learn about the world. I think the best classroom I've ever been in is traveling. I think that if you can give anyone, if any of your listeners are out there, give somebody a gift, the gift of travel, I think, is one of the best gifts. But it was a great year. We probably did around 200 shows that year, and we went all over. I shouldn't say all over the world. That's not fair to say. We did a lot of Europe and South America, and I've been to every state except for Alaska, and I think 30 of those came from Up With People. So it was a great year. It was a wonderful experience. And so with that, there was a little bit of singing going on. I go to the university and end up at the University of Kansas, and sang a fair amount there. One of my fraternity brothers, not Dan Rooney, but another guy, his family was a part of a special golf club out in LA. We're there. And at this table, there's a number of people, including Mac Davis. I had to ask Bob Newhart to pass the ketchup. Some older people. Engelbert Humperdinck is like a real dude. Yeah. I thought he was a K-Tel commercial guy, like for real. I
I think a lot of us would have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was his song?
Oh,
So I sing you to sleep after the loving. Remember that whole deal? I thought it was like a fake commercial. He was there.
I thought it was a cartoon.
And Vin Scully was there, and he ended up having some family members go to KU, but he was a little bit upset that they were going to have to play the tape that day because the Bakerfield Choir's bus broke down or something.
Oh,
and they
jeez.
called Bel Air Country Club because they knew he'd be there because he's there.
For the national anthem.
They called to let him know that there was going to be the tape because apparently Vince Scully was get a little upset about that because he would say, of all the cities in the world, do we really have to play the tape? This is Hollywood, for goodness sake. So Mrs. Anderson at the table, along with Machel Roddenberry, the wife of Gene Roddenberry, who founded Star Trek. I'm not a Trekkie, but this is our table of 8.
My goodness, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and she's like a Broadway performer herself.
Didn't know
she's
that.
an
Yep.
unbelievable performer in her own right. And she was on Deep Space Nine as a character because her husband
Red
wrote a part for her.
Alert.
Probably. More like Nerd Alert. I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm kidding.
That's me. I'm nerding
So
out.
Mrs. Anderson's like, he sung the national anthem at some KU basketball games. He could do it. And so later that day, I'm at Dodger Stadium singing the national anthem, which I was talking about earlier today because I was talking to some folks in Houston. So then I moved to Houston for work, and we can get into the business stuff. I ended up working for Procter & Gamble, which is why I was in LA. It's my first job out of undergrad at KU.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was speaking to some people in Houston today. Because of that experience, I sang the national anthem at the Astrodome, which was probably one of my toughest gigs because of the dome and the echo.
Oh, wow.
And everything.
That's interesting.
And I fist bumping. So this is, call it 1995. It was not a thing yet, at least in my whatever world. And if you're a baseball fan, Jeff Bagwell, I think, won the MVP that year.
Yeah.
He gave me a fist bump after I sang as I was walking back, to my spot. And I didn't know if he was coming to hit me. Why's your fist out? Like, what did I do wrong? But it was a fist bump. So I got my first fist bump from Jeff Bagwell.
Jeff Bagwell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
That's an awesome story. I mean, you didn't wake up that morning thinking you were going to do that at Dodger Stadium. I mean,
no,
you were just like, you're going to lunch.
I was going to go play golf at Bel Air Country Club. And yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Troy.
You're welcome.
You and I could do this for hours, and I would not get bored. So really, really thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge and relationship building and communications, and your story of life and giving back has just been great for me, and being on this podcast, pinch hitting for Justin Brady. I think now what I'd like to do just real briefly is just, I know I talked a little bit about my business and what we do.
Sure.
I might just throw out that listeners could go to langinsolutions.com. That's my website, and that's LANGIN Solutions. I also have another one called HLlenders.com, and that's my finance company. So if you visit us there, get a hold of me. We'd love to talk to you and do anything we can to help. And then I'd love for you, if you wouldn't mind, Troy, to talk a little bit about your businesses, what you're involved in,
Sure.
JT Logistics, and so on.
Sure. Happy to do it. Thanks for asking. So entrepreneurialism is an interesting thing. I mean, there's a lot of descriptions and there's a lot of definitions, but I think one of the fundamental boil downs of that is being in control of your day and being the person who creates what you want to be. It's not just about taking risk and owning a business. Being an entrepreneur means, I think, starting something, trying something, being willing to fail, but hoping that you don't. And so I've been really lucky to have some great people in my life. I mentioned Mike earlier. We were a part of a real estate development team. We did some pretty cool stuff here in Des Moines and in other places. The Hyatt Place downtown was a great learning experience from a historic tax credit standpoint.
That was awesome.
I didn't much understand construction, kind of still don't, which is weird because I'm part of a construction company. But during my time in business, I would say we probably could have grown a little bit more over the years, but we chose to play with our own chips. And as limiting as that was, at least it was our chip. So whatever poker hand we played, it was our poker hand to win or lose. And so I've been really lucky to have 3 partners in my life at Premier, Joe, James, and Jamie. And we started Premier Real Estate Services about 15 years ago, and that's a commercial real estate firm. People use the word boutique. I mean, I think it's just a nice way to say we're small, but I hope you think it means we're stylish or whatever. But we're a commercial real estate firm based in Iowa, and we manage some multifamily, which is apartments. And so we've been really lucky to do some pretty cool things. So Premier has out in West Des Moines, this is an Iowa-based podcast, yeah?
Yes.
So in West Des Moines, there's a place called Premier Point, which has like AT&T and Chipotle and Firebirds and Scissors and Scotch and Five Guys and all that. We're very blessed to have that as one of our holdings. And then one called North Park, where the original 1908 Draft House was, which might have been the first time you and I had a Diet Pepsi.
I think you're right.
Yep. And then we have a deal in Altoona that has like a Raising Cane's and some other great tenants. So that's been my commercial real estate world. My role there was really a developer. James is really great at attracting retail and understanding those things. Joe is really great about operational excellence and really property management. And then Jamie was more about construction. I believe the skill set that I brought was, and which is how I started working with you a little bit, was really the development and the finance package for all those deals. So Premier is still an active company. We have a property management company. We have these different LLCs that own the real estate. And then we have a general contracting company called Premier Commercial Services, PCS. So that's been kind of a three-legged stool in the real estate world. About 6 years ago, I met Jamie, my partner, a different Jamie with JT Logistics. He's the J and I'm the T. It was a real estate play to buy some warehouses out of a 1031 exchange. So that's how I got into that. The more I learned about it, we probably weren't going to be doing a whole lot more development at Premier. And that's really where my skill set was. Yeah. So I found myself really not realizing my full potential. So I jumped into the logistics company, and we have had a really great run. We are a third-party logistics company, which really means we handle other people's stuff for them. You know, logistics is an interesting word. It doesn't just mean trucking. It doesn't just mean warehousing. It really means helping things along the supply chain. So I was really happy to have Jamie come into my life, and I've learned a lot from him. He's got a high energy and really great goals. I've kind of created kind of a support position there as an owner and a partner, but we had 3 warehouses and about 45 employees when we made the investment about 5 years ago. And now we've been very, very lucky to have a great team, great clients, and we have 24 warehouses across the country and 720 associates. So it's been quite a ride.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was fortunate to hear Jamie speak a little bit earlier today.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were at that event.
Fantastic speaker, and gave you a lot to think about. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's not just the CEO of the company. He's like the chief culture officer. I mean, he really does care about culture, and one of our core values is create amazing, and we really do try to do that.
You can tell when you listen to both you and he. Where do our listeners find you, Troy?
From the next time I'm singing, or no, I'm kidding.
If you need a national anthem song, right? I'll tell Sam Burnaby to call you.
So jtlogistics.com is our website, and then Premier-Midwest is the real estate holding company. And it sounds to me like some of your questions were really about work-life balance, entrepreneurialism, and all that. I think if you just open and honest with folks, and if you really try to foster an environment of trust, good things are going to come back to you. There's always going to be headwinds. There's always going to be fall down moments, but like you read in a lot of books and you see a lot on television, it's really about what happens after that. And that's why being on a team, having support, having people like you in my life, you've been a lender and a friend and a tenant, actually, one of the banks that you had. Yeah. And so just never close things down, I think would be the advice I would give. And just, if you always really do try to do the right thing, you might not always get there, but if the people around you see that and feel that, they'll want to come back to you. And you need to be there for them as well. There's deposits in relationship bank accounts, and there's withdrawals. Try hard to make a lot of deposits, because you never know when you're going to need to make a withdrawal. And it might be in the middle of the night, on a holiday, in a panicked moment. So the more deposits you've made with the other person on the side of that, the more apt you are to have a balance in there that you can pull upon.
Awesome words, awesome advice. Thank you, Troy Strawhecker, my friend.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and this was just an awesome conversation. I hope we have another one.
I do too. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.